SolarWinds, the supply chain attack that reached governments. Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we are looking at something that, quite literally, fundamentally changed the way the world thinks about cybersecurity. We're going to unpack the SolarWinds hack. And look, this isn't just your standard story about some computer virus. No way. This is the story of one of the most sophisticated, sprawling, and frankly, historically significant cyber espionage campaigns ever executed. If you want to understand modern digital warfare, you absolutely have to understand SolarWinds. The sheer scale and honestly, the brilliance of this operation is staggering. By the end of this explainer, you're going to see exactly how an invisible threat managed to bring global superpowers and corporate giants totally to their knees.
So, that brings us to the massive central mystery we're unraveling today. How do you break into the most secure organizations in the world without triggering a single alarm? Seriously, think about it. We're talking about top-tier government agencies, massive multinational corporations. These guys spend billions of dollars building digital fortresses, right? They've got firewalls, intrusion detection systems, 24/7 monitoring, whole teams of elite security analysts. Breaking down their front doors is, for all intents and purposes, impossible. So, if the front door is barricaded, the windows are bulletproof, and the alarm system is flawless, how on earth did the attackers get inside? Well, the answer lies in fundamentally rethinking the nature of the attack itself.
Okay, let's dive into this. We really need to understand a crucial comparison here: the direct attack versus the supply chain attack. Now, a direct attack is pretty much what we usually picture when we think of a hacker, right? Someone sitting in a dark room furiously trying to guess a password or just batter down a network's defenses. But a supply chain attack? That is far more elegant and honestly way more dangerous. To put this into perspective, let's use a physical world analogy. Imagine you want to rob a whole neighborhood of heavily fortified houses. Breaking into each home individually? That's loud, it's slow, and it's super risky. You're probably going to get caught. But what if, instead of breaking into the houses, you compromise the town's water plant? You introduce your payload at the source, and the infrastructure itself delivers it directly into every single home, effortlessly bypassing all their fancy locks and security guards. That is exactly what a supply chain attack does in the digital world. You just hide inside a trusted delivery service.
Which brings us to the reality of the SolarWinds hack. The hackers basically looked at the board and realized targeting governments and Fortune 500 companies directly was just way too difficult. So they pivoted. The target became the software factory. Specifically, they went after a highly trusted software vendor named SolarWinds. Now, SolarWinds produces this IT monitoring and management software called Orion. You can kind of think of Orion as the central nervous system for an organization's IT department. It watches over the servers, the workstations, the whole shebang. And because it has to monitor everything, Orion requires top-level administrative access to function. It's a highly privileged, deeply trusted piece of software used by tens of thousands of organizations globally. By compromising SolarWinds, the attackers essentially found their water plant.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because the exact mechanism of the compromise unfolds in three very distinct phases. Step 1. Infiltrate SolarWinds systems. And look, the attackers didn't just do a smash and grab. They quietly snuck into SolarWinds' development environment and just watched. They learned and they waited for months. Step 2 is really where the dark genius of the attack shines. They inserted their malicious code directly into a routine, upcoming software update for the Orion platform. They essentially injected a backdoor right into the legitimate source code. And then, Step 3, distribution. The attackers didn't even have to push the malware to the victims. Actually, scratch that, they didn't have to do much of anything because SolarWinds did it for them. When SolarWinds shipped their routine software update to their clients, the compromised code just went right along for the ride.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is understanding why trusted software becomes so incredibly dangerous. You see, when a reputable company like SolarWinds creates a software update, they seal it with a digital signature. Think of it like a totally unforgeable wax seal on a letter, basically proving to your computer that the update genuinely came from the trusted vendor and hasn't been messed with in transit. But because the attackers inserted their malware before SolarWinds applied that digital signature, the final update was signed, sealed, and delivered as completely legitimate. When the victims' computers received the update, their security systems checked the digital signature, saw that it was officially from SolarWinds, and just waved it right through the firewall. Trust itself literally became the ultimate vulnerability.
And here is the most terrifying part of this whole thing. The victims installed the malware themselves. This is where the dramatic irony of this entire event really hits its peak. In cybersecurity, what is the #1 rule we are all taught from day one? Always install your updates, right? Updates patch vulnerabilities. They keep you safe. The IT professionals at these highly secure organizations were doing exactly what they were supposed to do. They saw an urgent security and feature update from a highly trusted vendor, and they proactively clicked download and install. By following the absolute best practice of cybersecurity to the letter, they were the ones who unwittingly wheeled the Trojan horse right through their own unbreachable gates.
And the result of those proactive little clicks? Thousands. This wasn't some targeted, laser-focused strike against one or two political enemies. Because SolarWinds is such a cornerstone of global IT infrastructure, the blast radius was just massive. Up to 18,000 different organizations unknowingly downloaded and installed that compromised update on their own networks. 18,000! Literally overnight, the attackers had thousands of open backdoors spread all across the globe. They could just sit back and pick and choose exactly which organizations they wanted to exploit further, elevating their privileges, stealing data, and establishing deep, persistent access.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how severe things got, because out of those 18,000 victims, the attackers had their pick of incredibly high-value targets. The massive fallout included top-tier U.S. government agencies. We're talking departments dealing with Homeland Security, the Treasury, Commerce, plus a huge chunk of major Fortune 500 companies, including some of the world's leading technology and cybersecurity firms. The attackers gained access to private emails, sensitive internal documents, and proprietary secrets at the absolute highest levels of global power and industry. It was an intelligence-gathering goldmine. The very institutions tasked with protecting national security and global commerce were completely compromised, and it was all because a single software vendor in their supply chain got breached.
Now, what's really interesting about this concept is how we actually stop this from happening again. We completely have to rethink trust, which naturally leads us to zero-trust architecture. Traditionally, networks operated kind of like a castle with a moat, right? Hard on the outside, soft on the inside. Once you were past the moat or the firewall, you were trusted. You were good to go. But SolarWinds proved that the enemy can just be casually invited inside the castle walls. Zero Trust throws that whole moat concept completely out the window. It's a security framework that requires all users and devices, whether they're sitting inside or outside the network, to be continuously authenticated and validated. In a zero-trust environment, nobody gets a free pass. Even if a piece of software is officially digitally signed, its behavior is constantly monitored, restricted, and verified.
So, bringing it all together, what are the crucial lessons for the future? First, we can never, ever implicitly trust software updates again. That old trust but verify model, it's dead. It absolutely has to become never trust, always verify. Second, organizations have got to aggressively embrace zero-trust architecture. We have to design our networks operating on the assumption that a breach has already occurred. And third, we must strictly audit and verify our vendors' security. Look, you are only as secure as the weakest link in your supply chain. It is simply no longer enough to just secure your own house. You have to demand relentless security audits from the water plant, the electric company, and literally anyone else who holds a key to your infrastructure.
I want to leave you with this final, kind of provocative thought. If trusted software, the very tools we use to build, monitor, and secure our networks, can be silently turned into a weapon, how can you ever truly trust your own systems again? The SolarWinds attack didn't just steal a bunch of data, it completely shattered the fragile illusion of digital trust. As we move forward into this incredibly connected world, absolute security is a total myth. Our focus has to shift from simply trying to build taller walls to developing the vigilance and the architecture to detect and neutralize the threats that are already hiding inside. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking the hard questions, and I'll see you next time.